After 6 years with Ethan Bell, I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and overheard an argument outside the door. But it was just the two of us in the house. Who was Ethan talking to? I peeked through the crack in the door and saw 2 Ethan Bells. Bro, you've had Hazel all week. It's my turn today. I fell to the ground in terror, my mind a blank. The door suddenly opened, and both handsome men wore a hint of regret on their faces. We've been discovered. Well, Hazel, guess which one is Ethan? I stammered, unable to say a word. Damn it, I had face blindness. 01. They approached step by step, their towering shadows gradually engulfing me completely. One of the Ethan squatted down, his beautiful fox-like eyes narrowing as he met my gaze. Hazel, guess which one is Ethan? My lips trembled, but I couldn't say anything. Anticipating this reaction, his lips curved into a smile. I forgot, Hazel is face-blind. I met Ethan during my junior year of high school. He went to another school, 2 grades above me. I excelled in science, but he was still far ahead. So, the teacher brought us together to participate in the provincial math competition. Ethan was an extremely taciturn person. During the training camp, he was economical with words except when I asked questions. I happily followed him every day, chasing him to ask questions. Just kidding, he got first place in the provincial mock exam. If I didn't latch onto this genius now, when would I? Later, when Ethan saw me chasing after him, he would reach out and take my book. Which one don't you understand? After winning the championship, I asked Ethan which university he would apply to. Ethan looked down at me, thinking silently, she's a bit like raising a clingy kitten. A university. It felt so far away, but the thought was like a seed buried deep in my heart. Then wait for me. I'll definitely get in. During those 2 months, Ethan had learned my potential. He gave a soft hum and smiled, his handsome, cool face softening. I'll wait for you. 2 years later, during freshman orientation, I saw him again. He was on stage as a student representative, giving a speech. I greeted him, and a flash of surprise crossed his eyes. Then, he lowered his gaze and concentrated on reading his manuscript. I just assumed Ethan was shy, so I greeted him enthusiastically whenever I saw him, never tiring of it. Over time, Ethan went from nodding to me to sometimes smiling slightly. The sunlight cast a soft golden edge on his chiseled face. Everything else faded. It was like returning to that afternoon 2 years ago. The secret seed had finally begun to sprout. I started asking Ethan to go to the library to study. But Ethan didn't really need it. He would basically understand everything after reading it once. Mostly, I buried myself in calculations, and Ethan naturally became my free tutor. Then, as repayment, I treated Ethan to dinner. Ethan, who was almost 6'3", didn't eat much. On the other hand, I was 5'6" and ate like a pig who had escaped its pen. I couldn't help but complain, Ethan, do you work out often? Ethan looked down at me, thought for a moment, and then gave a soft hum. No wonder you have such a great body. Ethan looked at me strangely, you haven't. Then, he seemed to remember something, his face flushed red, and he fell silent. I remember once when we were walking back from the library, it suddenly started raining heavily. The road was empty, and there was nowhere to take shelter. Ethan and I ran madly to a pavilion. I was wearing a white chiffon shirt that day. Ethan patted the raindrops off his body, and when he turned to look at me, with just one glance, his gaze was like being burned, and he quickly looked away. I gasped for breath, my fair face flushed slightly from the exertion. A few strands of hair clung wetly to my delicate face. He fumbled to take off his jacket and forcibly put it on me, ignoring my struggles. Raindrops dripped from his hair onto his cheeks, then slid down his neck, soaking his white short-sleeved shirt. The curves of his abdomen were faintly visible. I had a hard time looking away. In the end, neither of us dared to look at the other. We sat there for 2 hours until the rain stopped. The distance between us had suddenly shortened by a large margin. My roommate couldn't help but tease me, Hazel, I told you, with your persistence, you can succeed at anything. I giggled, Chloe, do you think he'd agree if I asked him to hang out? I'm Clara. An eerie silence spread. Damn it, I hate face blindness. In the following days, I often brought cream puffs and various sweets to Ethan. But Ethan didn't like sweets. At most, he would only taste a little. Over time, Ethan quietly noted my preferences, and slowly, Ethan started bringing the sweets. But more often, he sat quietly, watching me stuff my cheeks full. Ethan felt like he was raising a fluffy kitten. Proud, cute, and gluttonous. Gradually, I even felt like Ethan and I were only one step away from a relationship. So, the next day, I ordered a bouquet of roses. When I returned with the flowers, I saw Ethan hugging another girl. His back was to me. The girl was petite and seemed to be snuggled in Ethan's arms. I stood at the entrance. Ethan turned around, and he obviously saw me too. He frowned, his gaze falling on the roses in my arms, and he froze. Without waiting for his reaction, I spun around on my heels, moving my butt and legs, and ran away as fast as I could. God, I'll never call you Grandpa again because you really treated me like a grandson. 02. Back in the dorm, I burst into tears. Clara clenched her fists indignantly. I knew he wasn't a good person. I sobbed, but I haven't said anything yet. Don't say it. I understand. With my years of experience playing the field, I can tell this is a heartbreak. I cried even harder. I offered my sincere heart to the moon, but the moon treated me like an idiot. Clara couldn't stand it anymore and pulled me up. She pinched my fair face, looking disgusted. Stop crying. Your face is almost as rough as an old woman's heel. Let's go. Get yourself together, and I'll take you out. Soon, I was confusedly stuffed between two 6-foot-tall men with abs by Clara. One was naked from the waist up, with thin leather straps outlining the faint pink marks on his firm chest, abs, and arms. The other wore furry black fox ears and gold-rimmed glasses. His handsome features looked at me with a smile. They called me sister every other word, and I felt a tingle in my scalp. I stiffened my body, not daring to relax. Clara started taking me to play games. After a few rounds of drinks, my head felt dizzy, and I leaned against Clara and fell asleep. When I woke up, I heard Clara chattering with someone. I rubbed my eyes and vaguely saw Ethan. Ethan Bell, and 2 girls? My head hurt badly, so I supported my head and sat up. What did this mean? Was he afraid that I would keep bothering him, so he brought his girlfriend to warn me? I pointed at Ethan with great righteousness. Clara adjusted my aim for me. He's over here. Although, I like you, but, you have a girlfriend, so I won't bother you anymore, sob sob sob. I was saying it well, but my tear ducts failed me, and I burst into tears again. The girl was obviously flustered, and she quickly waved her hands. Beautiful, you've misunderstood. Actually, this afternoon. She had been sitting for too long that afternoon and her blood sugar dropped. When she got up, she blacked out and fell to the ground. Ethan just helped her up. After she finished speaking, she took out a document. Ethan knew you misunderstood, so he insisted that I go to the hospital with him to get proof. I looked at Ethan. Ethan was standing with red ears, like a child who had done something wrong. Clara performed steadily, rolling her eyes at him and taking a few male models to the other side. Seeing this, the girl quietly excused herself. Ethan and I sat side by side. At this point, I didn't know where I got the courage, but I picked up the glass in front of me and took a big gulp. But I picked up the wrong one. I grabbed Clara's. Her glass had a mix of red wine, white wine, and beer. I didn't realize the seriousness of the situation at all, turned my head, and looked at Ethan. I like you. Ethan nodded. I know. Aren't we already dating? My brain started to short-circuit. Wait, what? When? Didn't you accept my flowers this afternoon? Huh? I opened my phone. There were several missed calls and a picture sent by a delivery guy. His finger was pointing to the roses placed on an empty space. Did you order flowers too? Ethan immediately noticed something was wrong. We looked at each other, and then we laughed. I pouted unhappily and muttered, you still have to buy me new flowers. I already bought them on the way here. 03. Hazel? A familiar voice brought me back to reality. If you guess wrong, you'll be punished. I looked up, staring at the 2 identical figures in front of me, and cold sweat broke out. Clothes, eyebrows, hairstyles, even height were exactly the same. One of them squatted down, meeting my gaze, his warm fingertips caressing my cheek. The affection and tenderness in his eyes were like a net, capturing me firmly. The other stood there, the shadow of his hair obscuring his expression. I could only see the smile on his lips. Hazel looks so dazed. Doesn't she look like she does when she's sleepwalking? His words woke me up. I sometimes sleepwalk. I began to let my eyes wander, trying to make myself unable to see the things in front of me clearly, and then I stared blankly ahead. My gaze went straight past the people in front of me. Looks like she really is sleepwalking. A regretful but amused tone. The person standing turned and left. He stopped halfway and said, Liam, remember to turn up the air conditioning. Hazel is afraid of the cold. I know. Liam picked me up in his arms, and I continued to be dazed until Liam gently laid me down on the bed. I kept my breathing even, and Liam came closer, testing my temperature with his forehead. Still so cold. He turned and reached out, pulling me into his arms. I didn't dare to move, nestled in his embrace. His bare, muscular upper body was pressed tightly against me. Liam held me, his other hand stroking my back, from my neck to my spine. It was like petting a cat. The familiar, warm scent instantly relaxed me, and I gave a silent yawn. When I was nervous, Ethan would do this, soothing me with his touch. I was used to this kind of interaction. The tense string suddenly relaxed, and sleepiness quickly washed over me like a tide. Liam opened his tightly closed eyes, with no trace of sleepiness. 04. I should have remembered. I met Liam the first time I went to Ethan's house. Ethan won an award in an international competition, and when he returned, I brought a gift and went to celebrate. I put down the things in my hand, reached out to hug him, and muffled in his arms, "Weren't you supposed to come back the day after tomorrow?" Ethan tilted his head and kissed my lips, his lips curving into a gentle smile. "Because I missed you." Simple, pure, and passionate confession. Ethan cooked, the soft light shining on his perfect profile. I swallowed. "You know, I haven't had a husband since I was a kid." It was really a feast for the eyes. So, I wrapped my arms around him from behind, and my hands began to wander restlessly. A flush rose on Ethan's face, fair and rosy, making him look like a shy little wife. I pinched and patted his abs here and there. "Hazel, don't. I'm checking if you've been working out properly this week while you were abroad." I played mischievously, and my hand finally moved up and squeezed him hard. Satisfied, I nodded. "Yes, a man, Mom." Ethan's Adam's apple bobbed, and he let out a muffled groan. The muscles on his arm holding the spatula bulged with veins. Restraint, impatience, and desire intertwined. Seeing that things were not going well, I prepared to slip away. Without turning his head, Ethan directly restrained me with one hand, pulling me into his arms. My legs were trapped, and he pressed against me tightly. I could even feel the hot thing starting to raise its head and greet me. I didn't dare to move, and Ethan rested his head on my shoulder. "Focus on cooking." His warm breath was exhaled in my ear, and I couldn't help but shrink my neck. Ethan kissed the tip of my ear gently. "Don't be distracted. Cook both sides well." He won. I couldn't lust him. In the end, I fled in defeat. Ethan's muffled laughter spread, and my face turned even redder. 05. During dinner, Ethan opened a bottle of wine. I chattered away with Ethan. Ethan's gaze was tender and affectionate as he watched me. The love in his eyes was undisguised. I talked until my throat was dry, picked up my glass, and drank it all in one gulp. The sweet and mellow aroma of the wine wasn't strong at all. I smacked my lips. Ethan leisurely took small sips. I propped up my dizzy head, looking at Ethan's barely touched food with slight confusion. Ethan, aren't you going to eat?" Ethan's eyes gleamed as he looked at me adoringly, muttering out of nowhere, "I'll eat later." "Eat later? Eat a midnight snack?" I groggily raised my phone. It was 10:30. If I didn't go back soon, the dorm would be locked. I jumped up suddenly, then fell back down. Luckily, Ethan was quick and grabbed me. I couldn't see Ethan's face. Was the light dim? When did the living room light get so dark? I thought dizzily, my hand involuntarily climbing onto his muscular chest. "Hazel?" I responded dully, looking at Ethan's worried eyes and bewitching pink lips. They looked so soft. I reached out and touched them. The light was dim. I couldn't see the desire-filled redness in Ethan's eyes. I could only feel the hand holding me tightening. I gave a soft, seductive moan. That sound was like a sharp sword, severing the last string of reason in Ethan's mind. He picked me up, sat on the sofa, and I reached up and clung to him, my whole body limp. A storm of kisses caught me off guard. I reached out to push him away, but he grabbed my hand and kissed my palm. I trembled all over and felt even dizzier. "Ethan. I love you. I love you too." The unspoken words were drowned in passionate kisses. Ethan gently conquered the city. I gradually melted into a puddle of spring water. The tide rose and fell, the small boat sailing on the sea, sometimes carried to the highest point by the waves, sometimes falling down. Until finally reaching the destination, the small boat gradually lost power, drifting with the waves at sea. I clung tightly to Ethan's back, crying and begging for mercy. He kissed away my tears and slowed down. "Hazel, the night is still long." 06. I don't know when I woke up. When I woke up, Ethan was gone. There was only a note. "Hazel, I'm going to school to see my advisor. Breakfast is on the table. Remember to eat. Love you." He also drew a small line dog at the end. I couldn't help but smile. When I finished cleaning up and went downstairs, Ethan returned halfway through my meal. I ran over and gave him a big hug. Then I grabbed his collar and planted a kiss on him. He covered his mouth, his eyes stunned for a moment. I let him pull me while I complained about how intense last night was, not noticing that he wasn't Ethan at all. His phoenix eyes slightly raised, his pupils like black lacquer, looked at me with a look of inquiry and doubt. After a long time, he finally smiled, the corners of his lips faintly curved, playful and teasing. His eyebrows lifted slightly, and his eyes lit up. He reached out and pinched my face, affectionately coaxing me, "Want to go out and play?" His voice was magnetic and gentle, with a slightly rising tone at the end. "Like a cat hooking its tail and wagging it at you." I had almost never seen Ethan like this, sexy and alluring. When we went out, I asked Ethan what the advisor wanted him for. Maybe something about a competition. Ethan said casually. I stopped and looked at him suspiciously. Realizing he had said something wrong, Ethan began to make up excuses, saying the advisor wanted him to fill out a form. Maybe he was preparing to submit the next competition project. I took his arm and praised him generously. I knew you were the best, baby. Let's go. I'll take you to the amusement park. I didn't look up, so I missed Liam's red ears and his guilty look. Like a golden retriever who had done something bad. 07. Tired from playing, Ethan let me rest on a bench while he went to buy water. I watched Ethan's back. I just thought Ethan was unusually lively today. Was it because we went out to play? I reached into my pocket to get my phone, only to remember that Ethan had put it in his bag when we left. 08. 2 bottles of mineral water. The phone in his pocket kept vibrating. Liam took out the phone with the black kitten case with a displeased expression. He tentatively entered his birthday, and sure enough, it easily unlocked. The phone wallpaper was a photo of her and his brother. Ethan looked down at the person in his arms with gentle eyes. Liam couldn't describe the feeling, but he just felt stifled. If he had to say, he actually knew her earlier than his brother. The note, 6 feet 3 inches, abs, Capricorn, in her contacts was particularly eye-catching. Liam couldn't help but laugh. She's fishing for men. Hazel, why aren't you home? Did you go back to school? My brother came back yesterday. Do you want to meet him? Baby, why aren't you talking to me? Line dog JIP. Liam's hand unconsciously touched his lips, remembering the kiss this morning. He held a cigarette between his fingers, and in the hazy smoke, he smiled wickedly. His slender fingers aimed at Ethan's messages and pressed delete. 09. Ethan opened the water and handed it to me. 艾敏锐地嗅到了一股烟草味. When did you start smoking? He unobtrusively spat out the gum in his mouth, looking slightly innocent. The uncle at the store was smoking. I might have picked it up from being around him for too long. I nodded, then motioned for him to come a little closer. Ethan hesitated, but finally leaned over. I reached out my wrist and started rubbing it behind his ear. Ethan stiffened, not daring to move, even his ears turning a light red. So cute. I couldn't help but pinch his ear. The friction between our skin made Ethan tremble. Startled, his body moved back a bit, and the rise and fall of his chest became obviously more rapid. WH, what are you doing? His voice was a little unsteady. I hooked his neck and pulled him back. He lowered his head, and I looked up, our eyes meeting unexpectedly. Ethan's long eyelashes lowered, and his delicate eyebrows and eyes were painted like a painting in the sunlight. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. I swallowed and stammered. I sprayed perfume before I left. Here, let me rub some on you. I hastily averted my gaze, quickly wanting to withdraw my hand. Ethan grabbed my wrist the moment I pulled back my hand, quickly planting a kiss. I wanted to pull my hand back, but Ethan held it even tighter. He raised his eyebrows mischievously, looking at me with a smile, and then leaned over. I covered his mouth with my hand, too shy to look at him. I'll let you kiss me tonight. Ethan frowned, his eyes dark and unclear. Kiss him tonight? Then it won't be him tonight. He restrained me with one hand and kissed me deeply. The phone in his pocket suddenly rang. It was my ringtone. I pushed Ethan, vaguely refusing. Phone, Ethan's eyes darkened, and he restrained me with one hand. He took out the phone and glanced at it casually. The caller ID read, Hubby dearest. He decisively hung up the phone. Spam call. He pressed the back of my head and deepened the kiss. Afterward, I covered my face, like a bright red shrimp, curled up in Ethan's arms. Actually, as long as I went home with him, I would have found another Ethan waiting for me. But the school temporarily announced extra classes, so I didn't go back and went straight back to school. He saved his phone number in my phone, saying it was another SIM card, and also added a small account. I felt like Ethan was spending more time with me. Even though he was still at a seminar in another city the day before yesterday. The next day, he accurately appeared beside me to go out and play. He took me to restaurants I had casually mentioned liking. I just felt that his memory wasn't very good, and he always went to some places he had already been to again. I just assumed Ethan liked it and didn't ask. Our relationship got better year by year. Until the day of graduation, our 3rd anniversary, Ethan proposed to me. A sparkling gold ring. He hugged me tightly and whispered, Happy graduation. I grinned and hugged him back tightly. I love you, Ethan. His body stiffened almost imperceptibly. Ethan, huh? Then let's come clean. He lowered his head and kissed my neck hard. 10. I happily posted a WeChat moment. Ethan also posted one. That night, I asked Ethan to dinner, but Ethan unexpectedly stood me up. The next day, I saw that Ethan had a bruise on the corner of his mouth and his forehead was bandaged. Ethan said that he was accidentally hit by an electric bicycle when he went out. And his body was full of purple bruises. I felt so bad when I was changing his bandages that tears kept falling. Ethan didn't speak, but lowered his head, gazing at my neck with a desolate and painful expression. He raised his hand, hesitated for a long time, then pressed it on my neck, stroking the red mark. He should have broken his hand too. Ethan bit down hard. I cried out in pain, and the light pink red mark was covered by a darker hickey. Ethan was like an insatiable cat, demanding me over and over again. Say my name. What's wrong with you, I gasped from Ethan's movements. Hazel, please, say my name. He begged, his eyes full of helplessness I had never seen before, like a giant beast at a loss. Ethan. Ethan kissed me, as if he had made up his mind. This was our 3rd anniversary. 11. I was vaguely dreaming old dreams. A sharp pain in my lower abdomen made me wake up abruptly. I propped myself up and lifted the quilt. The bed was covered in red. Almost at the same time as I got up, Liam also woke up. He sat up and carefully supported me. What's wrong? My lips were pale. I clutched my lower abdomen tightly, barely able to speak. My period came. The pain made me almost unable to stand. I had been cold since I was a child. Every time this happened, I had a faint feeling of dying. It was like a hand reached into my uterus and gave it a beatdown. I supported myself against the wall to go to the bathroom. When I came out of the bathroom, Liam effortlessly picked me up and carried me to the sofa, taking 2 warming patches from the drawer. He knelt on the ground and carefully applied them to me, one on my stomach, and one on my lower back, just like before. Then he took 2 pillows from the bed and placed them behind my waist. After settling me down, Liam started cleaning up the bed, his movements swift and efficient. I leaned against the sofa, watching Liam's busy figure. I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. Even if Ethan and Liam were standing together now, I still couldn't tell them apart. This couldn't go on. I didn't want to become a sandwich or a cream puff one day. Liam finished cleaning up and turned to look at me. I squinted, my eyes blurred, wondering what I was up to. Liam went out and came back with a bowl of longan and red date soup. What was special was that it was sprinkled with a circle of golden dried osmanthus flowers. Ethan could also cook it. They had really learned a lot from each other for me. I stirred it absently, the porcelain spoon colliding with the bowl, making a clear, tinkling sound. Liam put his hand on my lower abdomen, slowly massaging it in circles. I leaned on the sofa. Liam wanted to pull me into his arms. I patted his head. Don't make trouble. Liam gave up, so he leaned over and pressed close to me, like a cat without bones. I took a few sips and put down the bowl. Liam looked a little aggrieved. Is it not good? I yawned. I want to sleep. Okay. Liam picked me up, tucked in the corners of the blanket, and his hot, scorching body moved over again, snuggling tightly against me. I frowned and pushed him, then turned my back to him. It's hot. He reluctantly moved a few centimeters, then turned and hugged me, holding my hand and circling me in his arms. I didn't care about him and fell asleep again. 12. When I woke up the next day, Liam had already finished cleaning up. He replaced the warming patches for me. Liam had been clinging to me these past few days, asking for kisses. I was curled up on the sofa watching a drama, looking at Liam. I found Liam was also watching me. Our eyes met, his eyes sparkling, and then he kissed me. I was like a giant catnip, pressed into his arms and kissed madly. Why didn't I realize it before? These 2 people were completely different in personality. If Ethan was a border collie, then Liam was a golden retriever. Sure enough, love could blind you. Hazel, do you love me? Liam suddenly stopped while kissing and cupped my face. Me? ? He was tense, his features were like meticulously crafted works of art, and he had an indescribable, enchanting aura. What was wrong with him again? My brain crashed for a few seconds. The emotions in Liam's eyes grew stronger. After my long silence, it wasn't long, I was only silent for a few seconds. The flame in his eyes gradually died down, and his wing-like eyelashes drooped, casting a long shadow. The heartbroken puppy drooped its ears, but didn't let go of my hand at all. Instead, it held me tighter. Liam's inner voice. Wah, Hazel doesn't like me. Wah. But I still like Hazel, like Hazel, like Hazel, wah. Like you. I knew you didn't like. Liam raised his eyes in surprise, all the tears in his eyes were held back. Hazel, what did you say? I rubbed his face, saying each word clearly, like you. I wasn't a saint. After being together for so many years, it was a lie to say I didn't like him. Liam's eyebrows arched happily, and the flame in his eyes was rekindled. 13. Liam left extra early today. I stood at the door to see him off. When he was about to get in the car, I couldn't help but stop him. Be safe. Goodbye. I waved to him. Liam smiled and waved back, as bright and radiant as he was when he was young. When he came back, he had my favorite jasmine flowers and a small cake in his hands. He gently kissed my lips, his eyes full of affection. This was Ethan. When I jumped out of the fog was nothing more than a layer of water vapor that disappeared as soon as it evaporated. What do you want for breakfast? Shrimp wontons. Okay. Ethan rubbed my head, then took off his coat and rolled up his sleeves. The muscles on his firm, tanned arms showed through. I sat at the table, waiting obediently for Ethan. Ethan's well-defined hands peeled the shrimp, removed the shells, and removed the shrimp veins, a set of smooth movements. Watching a handsome person cook was also a kind of enjoyment. I rested my chin in my hands, daydreaming. I didn't come back to my senses until Ethan put the bowl in front of me. A large bowl filled to the brim. I hugged the bowl and smiled happily. Ethan, you're so good to me. I can't live without you anymore. Then let's be together for the rest of our lives. Ethan said seriously. Okay. Since I was leaving anyway, I wanted to be happy for the last week. I took Ethan to pick up a bunch of packages. They were all custom-made handicrafts I had bought before and a bunch of blind boxes. I packed them up one by one and put them on his desk. The black and gray room was mixed with various incongruous pink and tender toys or small ornaments. I liked to put all kinds of weird toys in the house. Ethan would say yes to whatever I wanted to do, and even study it and buy me a lot of surprises. They were both good, but this was different. It was like I liked to walk barefoot on the ground, and Ethan would put thick carpets in the house. Liam would find me thick socks to put on for me. At night, Ethan put his arm around my waist and watched the new variety show with me. I was amused and laughed non-stop. More than watching the variety show, Ethan was watching me. He rested his head on mine and started pinching my face. I said unclearly, "What are you doing?" "You're so soft, it's nice to rub you," Ethan said honestly. Really? I raised my head, pouting, "My lips are also soft, do you want to try?" I saw Ethan's Adam's apple bobbing, and his hand had already pinched the back of my neck. He leaned over, closed his eyes, and his thin lips parted slightly. Just as he was about to get close, I suddenly turned my head away, and Ethan's warm lips brushed my face. I supported his shoulders and laughed, my whole body trembling slightly. Soon, I couldn't laugh anymore. Ethan pinched my chin and kissed me forcefully. Tender and forceful, after the kiss, I felt weak. Ethan thoughtfully patted my back to soothe me. My hand wandered over Ethan's body, and Ethan's ears turned red. It seemed someone was about to explode. I took the initiative, but Ethan only kissed me lightly, restrained and forbearing. Huh? I was full of question marks. Ethan sighed, "No, you just finished your period. You need to rest." After saying that, he fled to the bathroom. When he came out, I was sleeping soundly. I only felt the side of the bed sink down. I reflexively turned over and snuggled into his arms. It was the fragrant scent of gardenias. 14. I spent a week like this. On the last day, I coaxed Ethan. "I want to eat the cake from outside the old school gate." "Okay, wait for me." I stood outside the house, smiling and nodding, then gave Ethan a kiss. Ethan pulled me back, his face red again. "How about tomorrow?" I shook my finger, "No." The car gradually faded from view. I looked at the plane ticket I booked on my phone. Okay, it was time for me to go. How would they react when they found out I was leaving? Would they be angry and freak out? I opened my phone and sent a message to Liam on WeChat. "Let's break up, Liam. And also tell Ethan that he's also broken up with." 15. I arrived in a southern town where it felt like spring all year round, and I could wander through the alleys in a thin shirt. I breathed in the fragrance of grass and flowers. Although I was a science student, I had always wanted to learn how to paint. So, I found a painter to teach me. He's 6 feet tall, wears glasses, and is a refined man. What's wrong with finding someone pleasing to the eye? It's human nature. But that wasn't the case. After teaching me for a week, he looked at the paintings I turned in and his eyes widened in surprise. "You should have let me teach you sooner." I pursed my lips and smiled, feeling a little embarrassed. "Teacher, don't praise me. If you had let me teach you sooner, I would have been able to extinguish your desire to paint sooner." Me, underscore? Isn't that harsh, teacher? Days passed by, and after a month, I completely adapted to the new environment. The teacher was still mean. "You painted this? Go home, child, go home. What part of your body did you use to come up with this action? There are 10 lotus flowers in the pond. I pick one, and you pick 9. Sometimes, I was afraid that his upper and lower lips would touch and poison himself to death. On the way back, I mingled with a bunch of aunties, stealing secrets. Then I went to the supermarket next door and bought a bag of sunflower seeds, sharing some with the aunties. I just saw 2 handsome young men, tall, well-built, Is your daughter not married? I'll introduce you. Don't say it, my daughter brought back a daughter-in-law, I can't control it. That's it. When I die, she'll have someone to be with. As the aunties chatted, their eyes gradually moved to me. Hazel, you. I slipped away. I suddenly remembered my grandma's second marriage. I'm leaving first, aunties. Couples passed by me. It was almost Christmas, and the streets began to be decorated with lanterns. Street vendors were also hawking their wares. I suddenly remembered last Christmas. Ethan and I were walking on the street like this. I also bought him a Christmas hat and a plaid scarf. He said he liked it very much. He liked the gift and me. Sis. I looked down and saw a 6 or 7-year-old girl. She was holding a handful of red roses in her chubby little hands. Was she selling flowers? I squatted down and touched her soft head. Are you selling flowers? No, a big brother asked me to give them to you. It started to drizzle. I took the flowers from her and smiled. Okay, I'll take them. Go home quickly. Okay. 16. I changed out of my wet clothes, turned up the air conditioner, and put on a light nightgown. The room was filled with soft light. I looked at the roses on the table, and I could almost imagine someone picking them. It gradually started to rain. There was a slight noise from the window. I sat barefoot on the sofa, and the 10th season of The Pleasant Goat and Big Wolf was playing on TV. The darn official made me cry. I glanced at the curtains, wondering what the two people behind the curtains were hiding. My curtains didn't block the light. After I finished watching, I huddled on the sofa and didn't move. After more than 10 minutes, the people behind the curtains stirred. Ethan whispered, she fell asleep on the sofa again. The two of them knelt in front of me, reaching out to tidy my messy hair. Unexpectedly, there were bright eyes under the hair. Then, 6 of our eyes, big eyes staring at small eyes. I sat up and pointed my foot at Liam's chest. Didn't I break up with you? Turn right and leave. Liam's eyes were red, like a puppy that had been bullied miserably. Ethan wasn't much better, just helplessly and carefully holding my hand. Come on, someone tell me what happened in the past 6 years. Ethan pursed his lips and slowly spoke. The day Liam gave me the ring, Ethan finally knew what Hazel's strange words meant. For example, why did you buy their cake again? Aren't you busy these days? You're spending more time with me. Liam was the master of time management. He had to stagger the time I met with Ethan and avoid Ethan. On the night of the 3rd anniversary, Ethan beat Liam for the first time in his life. Liam threw a bunch of love letters at Ethan. These were the ones Liam had intercepted for him when Ethan wasn't around. A subtle relationship had finally formed between them. After listening, I said fiercely and domineeringly, apologize to me. The two said in unison, sorry. Okay, I forgive you. Get out. No one answered. Liam's hand gradually climbed up my calf. He was full of hurt, his eyes a sea of darkness. Ethan didn't speak, just rubbing my hand and kissing it gently. I lightly slapped Ethan, and Ethan clung to me like a snake. Ding dong, ding dong. Hazel. Don't you want your drawing board? Aren't you supposed to turn in your homework tomorrow? At this moment, I hated the fact that I installed a video doorbell. Liam and Ethan looked at me with ambiguous expressions. I swallowed and shouted, leave it at the door, leave it at the door. Hazel, who is he? What a fickle child. I got up to run, but my hands and feet were pulled back. Oh no, I screwed up.